Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot. Oh my. It's just another night for Supernatural Girls. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Here's your host, paranormal researcher Patricia Baker, on the one, the only Supernatural Girls.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Supernatural Girls Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker, and I am here with my Tucson-based co-host, PK, Patricia Kirkman. What's going on?
Well, it's just been a nice hot day. I could have laid out by the beach today and gotten a nice tan, but
rub it in, why don't you?
Well, I did. That's it. But I'm so cold-blooded, I'm running around in a sweatsuit all day, even with it this warm. Oh, terrible. I feel they're looking at me. The visitors that are here for the winter are walking around in shorts and sandals, and I've got my sweatpants and shirt on. So what can I say?
I know. You're acclimated. You got the thin blood going on. That's right. What you got, huh?
You can tell I'm a native.
That's right. That's right. Well, we got to find out the numbers, what's happening.
It's a beautiful day today. It's a day that dealt with our finances, so the material side and authority figures, people wanting to find a direction which to go to make them a winner. And it's also been a perfect time to look into any business issues that people have that they've wanted to deal with. But they're going to find that good leading of what they need to know to make it to the new roads of what's required for them coming up. That has been today's issue. But tomorrow, hey, it's a 9 day, so everybody's thoughts and cares and compassion are for others in a very special way. And they're also going to find out that others need a way of showing them how to deal with empathy. No one likes being alone or feeling alone, and this time of year brings us so much of that out with everybody. So
yes, it does.
When TLC is required, it's a gift to share with others, and it's amazing how much better everybody's going to feel, including yourself in return. The more you give right now, the better you're going to feel.
Yeah, well, that's good. It's a time of giving, so that is a good thing. And so any surprises coming up with the numbers? Any big reveals or secrets coming out?
No, not at the moment, but I'm looking into some things that I'm going to find. Well, firstly, let me add this. We're going into a retrograde. So everybody, you have to review. The retrograde starts in a few days. So that
is
being
Mercury retrograde for how long? I hate that thing.
Until the 6th or 8th of January.
Wow. So you might as well just not do anything until
that's right. Hey, you'll have to review it. And the worst part is things are going to break down. Electronics, messages are transposed. Things are getting lost. My son sent his checks in for his bills, and he got nasty grams from 3 different places. He used an old checkbook. He didn't use his new checkbook. Oh. So he's going, I said, retrograde's already, the shadow period is already here. And we're in it full bore now. So hang on to your seat and take it from there.
Okay.
But it's going to be a difficult time for everybody because we're so scattered right now. Because the universe is...
We've got a big moon coming up, don't we?
It was last night.
Oh, that was last night.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Now what did that bring in? Because that usually has something on either side of it, too.
Yes, it does. And that's why the emotional issues of what's taking place. And we're in a 3 universal month. So everybody's very scattered. And they've got all these grand ideas that really aren't working as they think they should. But they're going to give us a lot of positive things later, but we're working towards the end of the 9 year. Thank you, God. 2 more weeks and it's all behind us. And then and for those of us that have been in a 9 personal year as well as a 9 universal year, oh boy, you can't wait to see how we're going to jump up and down and celebrate.
Isn't that great? Wow, that's a lot to be happy about. So that's good news. All right. So we have a really interesting guest we're going to be introducing in the next few minutes, and it's all about alien abduction. Now, we haven't heard a good alien abduction story in a long time because they don't really abduct much anymore. So it's great that we've been lucky enough to get Sean Bartok with us tonight, and we're going to bring him on in just a few minutes. But first, a little bit of supernatural news. Now, did you take a look at that thing that I sent you about?
Yes, you did.
Oh, whoa.
I could not believe it.
I know. So listen, everybody, if you haven't been to our Facebook page, you need to go there and take a look at what we posted. Alien crossing, huge, mysterious UFO disc-shaped object captured across moon surface was an alien spaceship, say ET hunters. And I think they're right. And they've got the video here. So you got to take a look at that video. It is remarkable. There is no question that is something moving, flying, going over the surface of the moon. And it is definitely not just a piece of rock or something like. You got to see it.
No, it looks almost like wings.
Yeah. Now, they say that this is not the first and certainly won't be the last lunar-related UFO sighting or claims of an alien base on the gray planet. But because there's been other footage that has shown up that also says that there are UFOs being picked up by these cameras. And, we know that NASA tries to poo-poo all this stuff. But this one is really going to be hard to explain.
Definitely.
In any other way, right?
Yeah. It's amazing how much is out there. And after all, when you find that you've got more than 10 libraries full of all this to look at, you got to believe that it's there.
I know it. It is. Of course it's there. We know it's there.
We do, but we're getting the rest of them to pay attention.
Finally, huh? And because there have been so many more UFO sightings being reported recently. And it does seem, remember Jim Mars, he was saying that disclosure may be coming, but it's not coming from the government. It's going to be coming from the ETs. Now, I'm all set. We're ready. Okay.
Definitely. Well, wasn't it at one time they felt that maybe by the end of the year 2016, that we would be more informed about what's taking place. But the 9 years should be wrapping up a lot of the things. Between this year and next year, I really feel something's going to burst forth.
I think so. And again, speaking with Jim about all of this, Jim Mars last week for the short time he was able to join us. We won't go into details about that.
No. But he was here.
About 30 minutes. And he did say some important things, and that was one of them.
Yes.
So, I get that feeling. I mean, the incredible, just so many sightings being reported. And it's not just because we all have cell phones with cameras. There's a lot going on. In fact, tonight, I got to tell you something that happened. Very weird. I could feel the ETs around us getting ready for Sean to come on the show. And here's the funny part. I usually sit down at my computer and I type in Skype a hello to our fantastic producer, Joe Champion. So I did. And Joe says hello back. That's what we always do to get everything rolling. Except the timestamp on mine was like from the past. It was from an hour before I actually did it.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah, so he did a nice screenshot, which I am going to post tomorrow on Facebook and show everybody. I think the ETs are having some fun with us already, putting us in a bit of a
surprised me.
Yeah, you know how it is with them. They love to have fun with us. So they may even break into the show and have a few things to say. We're open to that.
Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be great?
Hey, we're cool with it. We're down with it.
As long as it's not a man in a red suit with a big white beard, we're okay.
Yeah, we're cool with it. We're because you know what? We're not afraid. So that's why they can talk to us, and it's okay. It's okay.
Definitely.
So,
that's a better conversation than we've had with some things over a period of time.
That is the truth. That is the truth. So, okay, well, let me just introduce our guest. Now, Sean is an artist, a designer, and this is not his real name. I'm going to tell everybody. He wanted to protect his identity and his family. It's understandable why, because as you remember, David Jacobs was on the show also last week, and as he was sharing with everybody, there are lots of downsides to telling everybody about your abduction experience, and there is absolutely no upside. Remember that comment from him?
Definitely.
So, yes. But Sean, if that's you breathing into the microphone, I'm not sure if it's you or the ETs. So if it's you, to back away from them.
Back up or we're going to think you're an ET. Okay.
I want to hear our guests loud and clear. So whoever's breathing into the microphone, we need you to back away. So,
Can you still hear me?
We can, and we're going to bring you on right now. Sean is the author of an excellent book called Flashbacks, an artist's memoir of alien abductions, native spirits, and enlightenment. Sean, welcome to the show.
Oh, well, thank you very much for having me on. I've been looking forward to this since the day you contacted me.
Well, thanks to Leo Sprinkle and our producer, Joe, who put me in touch with Leo. That's how we found you. And you've got an incredible story. And so we can't wait to get started. And also, so everybody knows, you got to get the book because there are lots of photographs of very strange things that Sean was able to capture, and you need to take a look at it. We're going to post some tomorrow, but you really need to get the book to see them and read the story. It is so otherworldly is the way I would describe it, right, PK? PK, are you there?
Where is PK?
PK, did you go away? Ready?
Okay, I'm sorry. I dropped something here and I went to pick it up and I'm going, then I lost my headset.
Oh, see?
ET's here.
Calamities tonight. But anyway, Sean, we want to welcome you again to the show. And let's talk about your experience because like many abductees, you didn't realize what was going on until many years after the fact, right?
Yes, I was 43 before I started connecting the dots, and Leo Sprinkle was really the person who instigated the questions that I asked myself. That then brought forth the things that had happened to me that I had conveniently tucked away and didn't want to remember, I think.
Well, you have such a gorgeous house in Colorado. The pictures that you post in your book and you published in your book, just an extraordinary place. If it were not for the rattlesnakes you had to do battle with.
They were a problem. And I think I'd mentioned how many I ended up killing. And then, it was a never ending job. And so when the children went to college, then I quit and because they were safe and I always knew that I could protect myself or, I was always very vigilant. But they were one issue, and then the other issue was that a local told us that we had built on a sacred Indian healing ground, and we were less prone to believe that as opposed to the snakes because they were there as a physical fact and we could see them. So it was a beautiful home, and we loved it dearly. And had a lot of experiences there over the 17 years that we did live there. And
now, you had your own experiences, and then also, as you named your book, Flashbacks, to others when you were a child. But your children were also having experiences, and your wife. This affected everybody in your family.
That's correct. And in the second book that'll be out documents a lot of the children's experiences because they were old enough then to articulate what had happened to them and what they'd seen and what they'd heard and experienced. But in the very beginning, it was all about me, so to speak. And maybe it was just because, I was the only one that was up night and day. And at the same time, the children were very young. And So I think that's the reason that in the beginning, or this particular book is more about me than it is them. But the next book will be more about them and less about me, which will be a good break for people.
Oh, they're going to still want to hear about you, Sean.
Definitely. Very, very interesting.
And it's an interesting dynamic that happened with you, because once you started having these experiences fairly consciously with lights and strange things that you were hearing in your house, you became very warrior-like, very protective, and you were going to get these things, whatever they were. But then that changed.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. In the beginning, it was. Well, we had spent all our money on the house, and there was no option to move in terms of we just didn't have the money. And so it was called, hey, you're going to have to defend yourself, because the police, if we told them we were having a UFO issue in 1980,
right.
We would have been committed right then and there. So, there wasn't any other choice. You either stood your ground, and at the same time, later on, I thought, well, if I got one, an ET, that I could pay for the house, and we could leave. And so, after a year of one instance after another of being, abducted, period, and experiencing some of the things that they put me through, and also the children, at least one of our children. We were ready to move, but by the end of the year, when we had solved our legal problems with our contractor and didn't owe anything, we had no inclination to move. And I think by then, they had pretty well indoctrinated us. And I remember Patty Hearst when she was running around with what was it, the Symbionese Liberation Front.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden they found her in the banks when she had machine guns. And so she identified more with her captors than she did her parents or, her other siblings and the like. And so the same thing, I feel very confident in saying this, happened to us. And they called it the Stockholm effect. But we didn't know that at the time. It was just that after we had the capability of moving, because all of our financial worries were put aside, we didn't. We stayed there. And so I don't know how they do that, or if, in fact, that's what really happened. But we had no inclination to move, and nobody said, we've got to get out of here now. And so we stayed. And the first time that I had an experience that was what I would call a very friendly one was and this was after we decided to stay, and it wasn't ever really spoken. We just stayed. But I woke up one night and I saw some pink and blue oscillating lights, rotating lights that were coming from a skylight and reflecting on one of the walls of the hallway that led to our bedroom, Sarah and my bedroom. And from her previous experiences, I knew exactly what it meant. They had landed on the roof with their small craft, and that, they were going to come in. And so it wasn't but seconds after I awoke to that, I saw this beautiful green light coming down the hallway to our bedroom. And the next thing I know, I'm laying on my back, and which I never do, and I can sense that there are people around me, and but yet I can't see anyone, and so I get fearful of that because it's just a unnatural kind of a situation to be in. But then I saw a shiny tube next to my temple on my right side. And it was a shiny tube about 1/8 of an inch in diameter, and it had a hole in the center of it, and it looked like silver. And all of a sudden, it started spewing really deep red sparks that were in hemispheric form or shape and about 3 inches in diameter. and this thing started rubbing up and down my temple to the back of my head.
Did it hurt?
No, there was no smell, there was no noise, there was absolutely nothing, and I couldn't move my body, but I had rolled my eyes around as far as I could until it was straining to see this, and so they kept doing this. Well, in a very slow, methodical way, and so then it occurred to me that they were trying to fix my eye. I'm blind, or legally blind in my left eye. Mm-hmm. And so it was then I thought they're trying to help me. And so then, everything reversed. I felt, like I'm not to fear anything because they're really trying to help me. But at the same time, I then freaked out, and they were on the wrong side of my head. And so I'm screaming in my mind because I can't speak. You're frozen in space and time. And I kept saying, wrong side. And so I finally just drifted off, and they were still working on my right side of my head rather than my left, because I figured the optical chiasm that they were trying to fix was, on the wrong side. And so then...
Was it fixed?
No, I wish they would have. But what did happen was not long after that, I noticed that a birthmark on the back of my head had been removed. And it was a birthmark that was about an inch in diameter. And originally, when I was very young, it was flat to the surface of my head. But over the years and combing my hair and brushing and all that, it had become three-dimensional and actually had sort of an edge that was maybe a 1/16 of an inch of a flap all the way around. And the doctors had told me that, to be very careful about it because I could get blood poisoning if I were clipped by a barber in the process of getting a haircut, etc. And so that had been removed. And I had a mole on my face, and that was gone. And so from that point on, I didn't have the same feelings towards them that I had before, but I had yet to really see them up close and personal. And at the same time, I was always jealous when I read or heard about people who actually talked to these people. And so, they were still a big mystery to me, but things were happening that just were unexplainable. And they were happening on a very regular basis, but not one that I could count on, like, I'm going to set my clock for 11 o'clock tonight and meet with one. That was never the case. And so while I felt better about them, I didn't really know who they were. They were just people who came into the house at night. So
how nice.
Yeah. So when I hear stories about people freaking out, which I did in the beginning, and there was a time when I came face to face with the entity that looked like a praying mantis. Now that really frightened me, but that was in 1997. So at any rate, my feelings were, benevolent. I really wanted to meet with them, but there was a tinge of fear of the unknown, which would come out every once in a while. So we went from, fearful, and I was going to hunt them down and shoot them if I could, which I had. I had 2 knives in between the bed and the mattress. I had a 38 there. I also, with hollow points, I had a 12-gauge shotgun under the bed, and that had Magnum buckshot. And so I was prepared, but it seemed like they always waited until about 5 minutes after I went to sleep. No matter how late I would stay up or how long I would listen, I never really got the opportunity. And I'm glad, of course, that I didn't. But I don't think it would have ever presented itself, because I think they knew exactly where I was all the time and what I was doing. And there were a couple times that I tried to ambush them, and because I knew they were around the house, and they were either never there, or I'd open the door after waiting maybe 30 or 40 minutes, knowing that they were outside the door, which that's pretty stressful. And I would see that the door had been cracked open slightly, ever so slightly. Now this is in the middle of the night, and I would open the door and just get blasted by the most brilliant light that I've ever experienced, and you felt like particles of light were going through you. So my hunting was all in vain, but it gave me encouragement in the beginning, because if you don't have a plan, you are going to be freaked out, period. But if you have a plan,
right.
If you have a plan and you have which I thought I had an instrument that could execute the plan, such as this pump 12 gauge shotgun, which could drop a full elephant in full charge. I thought that was probably big enough to handle the job, but of course that opportunity never did present itself. And
what a surprise! They're so far advanced. So yeah.
Their plan was better than your plan.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they knew what my plan was.
They sure did. Now, we've got a question for you from the chat room from Space Traveler. He wants to know, what year does these incidents take place? Now, the ones you talk about in your book are in the 80s, right?
Yes, 1980 until 86 is the first book, and then from 86 to 215 will be the next book. And the book that's out now, while it's from 1980 to 86, when I saw Leo Sprinkle in 1983, and he posed some questions to me, all of a sudden I realized that I had been visited every 10 years from the time I was 9, and I think from even the time I was 5. So I'm thinking 5 years of age, because I had this obsession with saying my nightly prayers, because I was avoiding going to hell. And my big issue was getting into heaven. And so my parents were not religious. So I know I didn't get it at home, this need to say my prayers. But in 2013, I had a flashback, and it was horrifying. And it I think was probably something I'd seen or had when I was 5, and it would make a believer out of you when it came to trying to get into heaven and avoid hell. So so that was at 5, and I kept saying my prayers always, and so when I was 9, I had an experience. When I was 19, I had a 14-hour loss of time, and I was fishing at my grandfather's pond, which was sort of my happy place, and I was really remorseful in that particular moment in time. And I drove down from Lawrence, Kansas to Paola, Kansas, which is about 50 miles, late one Friday afternoon. And I didn't really realize that I wanted to go until I was halfway there. And so, it was as though I had been called. And at any rate, so I had barely started fishing it was at night, and the stars were out. It was in the old days when you could see the stars. The Milky Way was just reflected in this beautiful pond, and I could even see Sputnik that night as it plowed its way across the heavens, and it was in the water as well. And then all of a sudden, all the stars were gone, and I looked up. And the next thing I know, it's 14 hours later, and I'm wandering around in the field next to the pond. So that was when I was 19. When I was 29, I was a assistant professor at a university in Denver. And I had a really bizarre experience that night. And I could illuminate that a little if you're interested.
Oh, definitely.
Oh,
We're going to be going to break in a couple of minutes, so we'll save this until after the break. But, it is important. People want to know what happened when you were on board the craft. Now, just a quick question on that. Your work with Leo, did that reveal what happened to you when you were on the craft?
No. In fact, the only time I remember being on a craft was in 1984, and that was January the 13th Friday, of course. You can pair that all together. And so it was either the 13th or the 14th. And that I'll be happy to tell you about as well. And
well, we're going to take a short break in a second, and we'll come right back and hear more about your adventures with the ETs. And also, you guys, don't forget to go to our Facebook page, take a look at our videos there that I posted, give us a like, follow us on Twitter. We have a great tweeter that's working for us, Melissa, and she is sending out tweets during the show and after. So make contact with her at Supernatural GLZ. We're going to take a short break. You are listening to Supernatural Girls Radio, and we'll be right back.
Listening to IRN, the Inception Radio Network, Chicago, Illinois.
You didn't forget what's coming up tonight, did you? Hi, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Never miss that interview you were looking forward to or the show on your favorite topic. Follow IRN on Twitter, I_R_N, and get reminders about the evening's live shows as well as fun and important updates throughout the week. That's I_R_N, and never miss a great show again.
My name is Ezra, and I'm from thehighend.org. You've heard of medical marijuana, but who can you trust for proper guidance? Here at thehighend.org, we have all the information you need. Did you know that scientists have discovered cannabis can reduce inflammation, pain, and spasms? It's helped my patients reduce the symptoms of autoimmune diseases, PTSD, autism, and insomnia. A compound from hemp called CBD is doing wonders for intestinal issues, anxiety, and the nervous system. I sell this compound at thehighend.org. I've worked as a medical marijuana consultant and educator for the past 6 years, and here at thehighend.org, I can help you choose from the hundreds of cannabis strains and products and find the ones that are best for your needs. To learn more about cannabis, schedule a Skype or phone consultation, or to have a CBD product shipped right to your door, visit thehighend.org. That's thehighend, all one word, .org. I'll help make your health high-end.
Hi, can you hear my voice? Imagine how many other people can hear it too. If you have advertising needs, then look no further. The Inception Radio Network currently has openings for on-air advertisements and radio show sponsorships. Given any thought to your target demographic? Inception has you covered there too. Advertising on a network gives you multiple opportunities to advertise on a wide variety of radio show broadcasts, and we have one to fit every advertising need. You know, in recent years, internet radio has exhibited a phenomenal listener growth. An Arbitron Edison survey shows that online radio boosts at least 33 million unique visitors each week and 54 million each month. And that number amazingly continues to grow. And these listeners are a part of many businesses' core demographics. And surveys have shown that internet radio listeners are far more likely than regular radio listeners to spend money on a whole range of activities. You know, internet listeners vote, they dine out and eat fast food, and they grab a cup of coffee. And here's the interesting one. They buy items online at a much higher rate than all other market segments combined. Internet radio also enables businesses to connect with consumers during work hours, where increasingly more lifestyle decisions are being made. Advertise with the best. The Inception Radio Network offers competitive advertising rates to fit just about anyone's advertising budget. Stop by today at www.inceptionradionetwork.com or call us toll-free at 1-888-919-2355. Get the word out. Get results with the Inception Radio Network.
Are you a fan of Inception Radio Network? Do you reckon it's the best alternative talk radio station on the planet? Well, if you do, head to facebook.com/Inception Radio Network and like the page. Tell your friends, spread the word, and keep listening to the best.
Hello, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Remember, you can take your Inception Radio shows on the go. Just download the Inception Radio Network app for your iPhone, iPad, or Android smartphones and access live shows, past shows, guest lineups, and much more. Just visit the iTunes Store or the Google Play Marketplace and download it today for free.
Your property tax bill. Have you seen it lately? It's frightening. Your property taxes are going up while your home value is going down. It's time to fight back and win. For the real truth about the property tax system, get attorney Pat Quintilian's book, Are You Getting Screwed on Your Property Taxes? How to Find Out and How to Fix It. Attorney Quintilian answers all your questions and gives you the facts you need to fight a property tax bill that is spiraling out of control. You'll also read about what happens to property owners who don't check their property records, only to find out too late they're taxed on square footage, fixtures, and even buildings that they don't own. Is this happening to you? Learn your rights. Buy attorney Pat Quintilian's book today. Are You Getting Screwed on Your Property Taxes? How to Find Out and How to Fix It. Available on Amazon.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to Supernatural Girls Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker. I am here with my co-host, PK, and with our guest, Sean Bartok. He is the author of Flashbacks. He's an extraterrestrial abductee. We're going to find out more about this right now. So, we've got a couple questions from the chat room. Let's see if we can answer those, Sean, okay?
All right.
All right. This one's from Trisha. She wants to know, did you have any previous medical issues prior to this experience that may have made the trip dangerous for you?
Which trip are we talking about?
Well, in 1980 and 1986, you had all these abductions. Did you have anything like, I think she's asking, high blood pressure, heart condition, anything that could have ended your life because of, what they did?
No, not at all. I'm in very good physical health now, and I was then. I was very athletic and had no problems at all other than, I was legally blind in my left eye. So there wasn't anything to keep me from doing whatever, I suppose. But
okay.
One of the other abductions that I had was I was in a room, and I was in a room that was hemispheric, and I was laying on my back, and I knew I was with really well-meaning people, but I didn't see anyone, and nor did I see portholes at that time or anything like that. But all of a sudden, there were images streaming down the wall. And the images, for a while, wasn't sure about them, but then some of them became known to me. And at the time, I was teaching a course in the history of design, and all of a sudden, I saw this apothecary bottle, and I recognized it immediately from the 13th century Byzantine period, and it was a bottle that had a green label and a black skull and crossbones. And so I looked at it a while, and it was as though I could control, the speed by which these images were going by.
Now, did this happen to you in an abduction experience, a dream experience? When was this?
This was an abduction experience, but it came across as a flashback, which to separate the two, is almost impossible. But the point is of this, in terms of being abducted, there weren't lights associated with this, not like I'd had in the past where, you would get hit with lights and then you would just fade out, or you just feel like you melted into your bed. I never saw anyone around my bed or anything of that nature. And it was as though, and this is sort of borne out later on, that they could move this dimension around that they were in. They could just move it around like a portable wall and move it past you, and you were immediately in their dimension. And I know that sounds nutso, but there were other people in the area who had similar kinds of experiences where this one particular person was walking down to feed his horses, and it was in the middle of the day, and he's a very smart person, very alert, and the next thing he knows, he's walking back to the house, and the moon is out. So, he had missing time, and you just walked through an invisible wall, and you were in another dimension, period. And I think that they could move that in our bedroom whenever they pleased. And so you didn't have the typical, people coming into your bedroom stories and beaming you out or anything like that.
But yet they did beam you out because you have a circle in the snow and footprints of aliens surrounding you, and you were beamed out. There's no question.
Yeah. Now that was a different experience, though. And so the point is that, they can take you with their lights, or they can take you with this invisible wall, or just a portal, as you would call it. And so, they're many and varied. The night that my footprints were found in the center of this circle in the snow, it was a Friday the 13th of 1984, and everyone was asleep but myself, and it was about 9:30, and it was snowing out, or it had been snowing out, and I decided to drive our SUV up and down our driveway, which was about 800 feet long, to keep the snow down, just in case there was any drifting, so we could get out in the next morning. And so I went outside after bundling up in a real heavy ski suit, and I couldn't get my car started. And I just put a new battery in it, and so I couldn't figure that out. And so I fiddled around with that for a while, trying to get it started and looking at the connections under the hood, etc. And so then I was wide awake, and I decided to go down to the studio, which was about 400 feet away, and do some work since I was awake and everybody else was asleep. So I started off to the studio, and it was pitch black out except for the snow covering the ground. And I could kick the snow up in front of me, and it was so quiet that I could hear it settle to the ground. So there wasn't a sound to be had. There was very little light, and it was at 9:30 at night. And the next thing I remember, which was very much like when I was taken at the pond, it's morning and I'm laying in bed and I can't get up because I'm so sick. And I notice that I've got this burning sore on my wrist, my left wrist, and it's right over an artery. And so I try to eat something. Sarah brings me some breakfast, and I promptly throw it up, and I'm just in a fit of sickness, which I've never been in my life. And so this sore on my wrist is just driving me crazy, and it looked like there were teeth marks, right? And it's elliptical in shape, essentially, and it looked like it had 4 teeth marks down the center, and it was deep blue, and there were just like lightning bolts going from the wound to my wrist bone. So it was horrible, but I would just drift in and out of sleep. Well, on this one sleeping episode, I'm sitting in a chair. It's a banana type seat, and it's gigantic. In fact, I can't lean back or I'll fall over, and my feet are sticking out in front of me, and they don't go over the edge of the chair like they normally would. And the seat in front of me is gigantic as well. You can't see over the top. So it's like being in an airplane seat, except it's a banana seat. It's smooth and it's covered with fabric, but it's very streamlined. And I'm looking at the back of the seat, and I cannot move anything except my eyes. And I know, just from my intuition, tells me I'm not to look around. And so after a while of sitting there and wondering whose butt would fit on a chair like this, I do roll my eyes as far as I can around to the right, because I can sense there are other people there too. And so the first thing I see is a porthole, but it's very foggy, and my mind is, if you've ever been abducted, the first thing you know is that you're not totally playing with a full deck. It's like coming out from under an operation where you've had an anesthetic, and so at least that's been my experience for the most part. So I'm in a groggy condition as it is, but the atmosphere seems to be moist for the first time, and it's kind of cloudy, and maybe I'm cloudy as well. And so I see this porthole, and then I roll my eyes just a little bit more to the right, and I see this gigantic person sitting in the seat across what would be the aisle from me. But he's quite a ways away because the craft is big, and there aren't any kind of dials or gauges or anything of that nature. It's just this porthole, foggy atmosphere, and then this big guy sitting in the seat across the aisle from me. And I only see a little bit of him for a short amount of time. And he is what I would call sort of swarthy and dark. He seems to have, hair covering his face. But I wasn't totally sure. But it was short hair, reddish brown, and dark, and it's brushed in accordance with the contours of his face, like an animal that goes through the brush a lot and has short hair. It's brushed back.
But let me ask you a question. Why do you think you were there?
Why do I think I was there? I think I was picked up on my way down to the studio. That's what I think.
And then what? Because you've got a lot of stuff going on with this. You have missing time. You wake up in your bed and you're sick as a dog, and your wrist is on fire. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's so many questions I want to ask. Let's start with this one. The thing in your wrist. Do you think that they put an implant in you?
Oh, no, this looked like they put something on my wrist and sucked everything out of me, and that's why I was so sick. I thought, especially when the stringy thing chapter comes along, I thought the stringy thing got the best of me because I went out to confront it. And I thought it had clamped onto my wrist like a moray eel, or, like a flatworm, and had sucked everything out of me except just enough to, keep me alive.
So you're talking about sucking out your blood supply so that you felt weak from that. Okay, so that's what I think happened.
Yes, other people thought it was radiation sickness, and just because I was on this craft.
Did you have a rash?
Go ahead.
Did you have a rash? Because a lot of people that have had radiation sickness from exposure to alien craft have a rash. It's like a radiation rash is what it is. Raised bumps or whatever.
No, the only thing that I recall was this horrible thing on my wrist. Mm-hmm. And it looked like a giant hickey, if you will. And so I had no well, okay, I'll continue on. So I'm looking at this guy, and he has gigantic eyes, but they're not like what you see of the dark eyes with covers. This is just big eyes that seem to wrap around his head, and I did a drawing of that from memory. And he rolls his eyes around, and ours meet for just a second, and he, I can tell, is my superior. And he gives me this sort of ominous smile. And at that moment, my heart sinks, and somebody hits me in the right kidney with what feels like a riding crop, and really whacks me, and it brings me around to full attention. I look back at the back of the seat and then just sort of melt into the woodwork again. And so I was in and out of these fits of sleep all day. And then by the end of the day, that was Saturday, I'm beginning to feel better. And so we go to my grandmother's, who's living in an adjacent town, and we have dinner. And we come back, and I'm still a little sick, but I'm 100% better than what I was. And so we go to bed early, which it's about 8:30. And we'd barely gotten to bed when our daughter, Brianna, comes running into the bedroom, and she tells me that, whispers in an excited voice, that she's heard 3 thuds down in the kitchen below us, which the house has got 2 zones, a private zone and a public zone. Public zone has the living room, dining room, kitchen down below, and the private zone is where the bedrooms, bathrooms, etc. are up above. So I normally hear anything that moves, and so I hadn't heard these sounds, but she described them as sounded like somebody had dropped a log or logs of wood on the floor, which we had a fireplace and then also this wood stove. And so she had heard that noise because sometimes they would slip out of my hand and they would fall to the ground. So I had just come back from looking at every door, and we had 6 sliding glass doors in the house, plus the entry door on the upper level. And so every night I would religiously shut those because of the snake situation, and then also with these visitors we were having at night, even though they didn't always use a door.
Band around the house.
Yes, but it made me feel better when I did that, because at least I did as much as I could to keep things under control.
Right.
So then the next day is Sunday. I'm feeling 100% better. Brianna goes outside. She's running down to the barn, which is down by the driveway, to feed the horses, and she comes running back in because she's seen something out in the yard, and she runs in and she tells us about these strange tracks. So we're all excited because for 4 years we had been having these experiences, and we would tell people about them, and they'd say, "You're nuts." And they wouldn't say that, but they'd roll their eyes, or you knew damn good well they didn't believe you. But some of them did. But the majority, it just wasn't worth telling because you paid the price. Well, anyway, so we went outside and we called the dogs in so that they wouldn't screw them up or it up. And so out in the yard in the snow was this circle that was 7 foot 3 inches in diameter, and in the center, from a distance, you could see what appeared to be 2 footprints in it, right in the center of it. So we got closer, and as we got closer, we could see that yes, there were 2 sets of footprints in it. One set was large and one set was relatively small. And then as we got closer and began to really dissect what we were looking at, we could tell that there were actually 2 sets of small prints inside the circle. And then the one set was appeared to be human, in as much as it had a really nice arch, which my foot has, as well as it was nicely formed. And so I began photographing, and when I stepped into the circle, and which I hated to do because it was the only evidence we had of any kind of thing happening, and I was going to be destroying it or part of it, I noticed that that it looked like my footprint. And I had been missing for 14 hours. I had this dream of being on a ship with this gigantic person whose butt fit the seat, and who had this sort of half malevolent smile. And so, from that I deduced that that's how they brought me home, and then beamed myself along with 2 small companions down to the ground, in which they then flew me back to my bed. And my footprints were 10.5 inches long, which is my foot exactly, and the smaller footprints were 4.5 inches long, which coincided with the creature that our son saw in the pine tree a year earlier, which is a real incredible story. And so that was a kind of a scary thing to see your foot in front of you and see the footprint from the night or the night and a half before that, you were in a circumstance which was, unreal.
Yeah, and out of your control. I mean, all of this, it's like they treated you like a lab rat. They came and got you when they felt like it, and they did things to you that made you sick, but so what? What do they care? I mean, it's a little disturbing from that perspective, and I know you and Leo both think of these entities as benevolent, but I wonder I mean, they don't seem to care that they cause you anxiety or pain or anything like that.
Well, I think that a lot of the things that I've learned have not come when I'm very pleasant. I mean, sometimes, there is high anxiety. In fact, if you can make yourself more anxious before a test, you're going to score better. So you sometimes perform a lot better under more or less anxious conditions. But the trade-off was I never felt there was I'm sure there are times that I felt, I know there were times that I felt I didn't know what was happening. I didn't like it. And there wasn't anything I could do about it. It was going to be happening. But at the same time, on one of the other abductions that I was on, they actually were projecting my mind and just going through my mind like it was a Rolodeck. And that's probably not familiar with people are probably not familiar with that, but it was, where you kept your business cards, in this little Rolodeck, and you could flip through it and find somebody's name or a business. And so they were flipping through my mind, but, I had free will at the time, and they were trying to communicate to me, or they did communicate to me, that it was an anti-war notion, and it was also take care of the environment. And that came through my artwork. From 1970 on, that was the message. And, that was a very firm message. And at the same time, I got this idea that not only could they take things from your mind, but they could also put things in your mind.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
That would turn up later. And so in that regard, and whether, maybe with me, I was just a lab rat, but for a lot of people who have kind of attributed their success in a given field to other worldly people or experiences or influences, there is the possibility, then I think it's a reality, that they do manipulate our mind. One person can change the world. Einstein was a good example of that. Tesla was a good example in the way we think about it. And then it draws thousands of people and millions of people along with the idea. And so not only are they, checking on us in terms of what, we have to offer, but at the same time, they're leaving little goodies behind. So I regard it as a symbiotic relationship, and not only in terms of them taking sperm and ovum and that sort of thing and using it to regenerate themselves, but at the same time leaving little bits of here and there with scientists and artists and composers and the like that then benefit all of society. So I don't see it as it's a scary thing for sure. Anytime you deal with the unknown and not know exactly what's going to happen, but overall, I am very positive about, what they're doing. Now, I know there are a lot of different kinds of ETs, and I think I was lucky enough to, in general, have decent ones that, weren't, playing with me just to see how I'd flinch, or testing me to see how much pain I could endure.
Well, no, we don't know really what they were up to. I mean, for sure, we have some theories in terms of creating a hybrid race that they're now populating the Earth with, according to some researchers. There's that. So you're kind of like a donor for them. And now that phase is pretty much over, that's why we, according to these experts, we see less and less of abductions, because they don't need to do that anymore. They have completed the genetic hybrid phase. So that's one possibility of what they've been doing with you. And as you said, they can plant things in your mind. They can make you feel akin to them, something like the Stockholm Syndrome, and so that you don't question them, you don't think it's a bad thing. So it's really difficult to know.
Yes, absolutely. And I think a lot of what I hear about experts, I have tried to not read books since everything even started. I wanted to be able to make a decision on my own using, my experiences and what I've seen. And I think, you bring to the table your personality. If I think if you're insecure, then you're going to bring that to the table that, oh my God, they're going to take over the world. And that's a foolish idea in my mind, because if they wanted to take over the world, they could do it in a flip of their wrist. Yeah, I mean, it's insane in my mind to think along those lines, when in reality, if they wanted to, when they were perusing through my mind, they could make me, an alien in themselves. And they don't need to come down, because they have all these people like myself that have been contacted. And I regard being a contactee as being a very good thing, because
then that's really good. I mean, we're glad to hear that, aren't we, PK?
Well, I'm glad it's him and not me. But a question for you.
Wait. We got to take a break. You got to save your question till after the break, or else Joe's going to be
Joe
mad.
will beat us up. Okay.
Yeah, we can't have that. Nope. So, everybody, we will take a short break. You are listening to Supernatural Girls Radio. Make sure you go to our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter, and stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You're listening to IRN, the Inception Radio Network, Chicago, Illinois.
Hi, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Just a reminder that Inception Radio Network is on Twitter. Follow us at I_R_N and keep up to date about who's on tonight, what interviews they'll be doing, who's guest spotting, what topics they'll be covering. Tweet to us, tweet about us, retweet topics to your friends, and most importantly, never miss a great show again. That's I_R_N.
Have a computer? Is your internet connection down? Don't worry. Use your trusty cell phone or landline and call into our listen line at 401-283-6700 to listen to the Inception Radio Network 24/7. Again, that call-in number is 401-283-6700. For the Inception Radio Network, I am MJ.
My name is Ezra, and I'm from the highend.org. You've heard of medical marijuana, but who can you trust for proper guidance? Here at the highend.org, we have all the information you need. Did you know that scientists have discovered cannabis can reduce inflammation, pain, and spasms? It's helped my patients reduce the symptoms of autoimmune diseases, PTSD, autism, and insomnia. A compound from hemp called CBD is doing wonders for intestinal issues, anxiety, and the nervous system. I sell this compound at thehighend.org. I've worked as a medical marijuana consultant and educator for the past 6 years, and here at thehighend.org, I can help you choose from the hundreds of cannabis strains and products and find the ones that are best for your needs. To learn more about cannabis, schedule a Skype or phone consultation, or to have a CBD product shipped right to your door, visit thehighend.org. That's thehighend, all one word, .org. I'll help make your health high-end.
Hello, Inception Radio Network. Would you like your favorite show to be played again live on air? Well, now the choice is in your hands with IRN's live request portal, an easy way to request your favorite show with a simple click. IRN's live request portal now gives you exclusive access to all the shows. How easy is it? Simply type a show name or a guest name, click request, even write a dedication message, and that's it. Try it now. Simply visit InceptionRadioNetwork.com, click on the live request tab under the show menu. Now playing your favorite show is just a mouse click away.
Are you a fan of Inception Radio Network? Do you reckon it's the best alternative talk radio station on the planet? Well, if you do, head to facebook.com/Inception Radio Network and like the page. Tell your friends, spread the word, and keep listening to the best.
Are
Are you ready for a new experience of freedom and powerful connection? Would you like a positive, effortless change in your life? Then come to CosmicFusion.com, where we offer the most advanced energy clearing and expansion techniques in the world, with a quantum vortex energy to activate your divine blueprint and life's purpose. When your soul leads the way with cosmic fusion and quantum vortex energy, you can break clear of past difficulties and blocks with the power of the source. With cosmic fusion, the source energy does the work for you. It's easy and effortless. Listen to our free meditation right from our Cosmic Fusion website, the Cosmic Code Meditation. Sign up for one of our interactive webinars today. Come to Cosmic Fusion, www.KOSMICfusion.com, to experience an effortless awakening and transformation. Are you ready for an upgrade? Are you ready for a new experience of living in the fifth dimensional magic and powerful connection? Then visit CosmicFusion.com today. CosmicFusion.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to Supernatural Girls Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker. I'm here with my co-host, PK, and our guest, Sean Bartok, who is the author of a new book called Flashbacks, an artist's memoir of alien abductions, native spirits, and enlightenment. There is a photograph of the book cover on supernaturalgirls.com website. Mm-hmm. You can click on it. It'll bring you right to the Amazon link where you can purchase it. It's a great book. Really,
it is. It's fabulous.
And we haven't had any abduction stories in quite some time, as we mentioned. So here's your chance, everybody, to read up on a really interesting abduction that went on for years and is still going on today. So, PK, you had a question, and I didn't mean to cut you off. But
no, that's okay. We needed to take our break. But I was curious as to whether anyone missed him while he was gone on these little journeys.
Yeah. So did they miss you, Sean?
A whole bunch.
Yeah. Come on, tell us the truth.
On this particular event, my wife couldn't remember me coming back to bed after I headed for the studio, and I couldn't remember it either. So, there was missing time there. But otherwise, they generally took us in the night. And so, everybody's sleeping but one person. Or in book 2, the whole family is it was abducted. And that was a very horrifying experience because I woke up and for a moment there were beds all around me or platforms all around me. And I knew the whole family had been abducted, but I couldn't find anyone. And that was frightening because I didn't know, where they were or what was going on or what they were doing. Because I think that one member of the family also becomes sort of the contact person and shepherds people through events. And I know we had a guest at one time who told us a pretty horrific story the next morning after she'd stayed in the house. And she said that our daughter was right beside her, and she was on this platform bed, and that our daughter kept telling her everything would be okay, everything would be all right. And so she kept the person that had visited us and had this experience, which I'll be writing about or is written about in book 2. She said it looked like our daughter, but not quite. And it's as though they had morphed into, an image that one has in their mind of a person so that they can console them while they're doing things to them that would normally freak you out. But So,
well, the question was, did they know you were missing? And apparently not. They, like, as you mentioned, we were off the air. They keep everybody else sound asleep except for the person they want to take. But I've got a bunch of questions for you from the chat room. Let's see if we can get to some of them. Were your grandparents or your mother did they ever volunteer for any studies before you were born?
No, they never did, because I don't think let's see, Mother had experiences when she was young in 1935. The UFO issue wasn't even acknowledged at that time, and barely in 1980. And barely again in 1970, when I first started really having, abduction experiences. So the answer is no, but my mother talked about seeing lights outside their farmhouse in a small town called Spring Hill, Kansas, which was not far from the Olathe Naval Air Force Base in Kansas.
That says something.
Yeah, I wonder if the government's involved again.
There's trouble when they're involved with this stuff. Yes. Now, here's another question. This is from Daria. She wants to know, did you find any solace and courage in coming forward about your experience after seeing Whitley Strieber's story told in the movie Communion?
No, I've never seen the movie. I got in a lot of trouble because of because of the Time magazine cover. I was checking out of a Safeway, and I had at one time mentioned, ETs, and I was, I knew that I wasn't supposed to talk about it as a university professor. And but when I saw the cover of Communion on Time magazine, I just went crazy, because I thought, at last, people are accepting this idea. So I had a friend who was in the media, and so I told him about it. And all of a sudden, I'm on a talk radio show and also being interviewed, and the world came crashing down on our family's head. And we were, summarily sorted out and chastised. And so, I kept my mouth shut after that until now, actually, in terms of anything public, because I knew damn good and well, you pay the price, and it can be your career.
Oh, definitely.
Yes, we've heard that before. That's sad. Yeah. It's so sad.
Terrible. Yeah. Shouldn't be that way. Now, here's another question for you, Sean. Did you see any type of lettering that you could remember and draw?
No. If I had, I would have been able to do it, replicate it, because I've taught typography and even hand lettering in the past as a graphic designer. So it would have really popped into my mind, I know.
Yes. Okay. And here's another question. I think you kind of answered this, but I'll ask it anyways. This is from Supersonic. He says, at age 5 was your first abduction. How many have you had since then? And what's the time frame between each one? I think you said 19 abductions and 10 years in between each. Is that what you said?
No. When I recalled that I had been having experiences, they seemed to be at 10-year intervals. That's when I was in Leo Sprinkle's office, and he asked me some questions that then I began to think about my past and things that were unusual or out of place. And that's all he had to ask me, and all of a sudden these other things popped into my head. And so they were at 10-year intervals. Now, in 1980, when we moved from Denver to our rural house in Plum Creek, then after that, the abductions just accelerated. And I think they were abducting me many times before we moved, because I would go out and do what would be called an environmental assessment, trying to figure out the location of the house when it was a passive solar home. And so I would, study the environment, and I started removing yuccas and cutting trees and stacking wood and all that. And in this one situation, we had a spring on the property, which was a real selling point for me because I was sure there was going to be a nuclear holocaust. And so if we had spring water, that meant, it didn't have to be pumped out of the ground. Didn't need electricity, and we could probably survive a thermonuclear war. And our location was down behind this mesa, which I thought would absorb the shock waves and keep us from harm. And so I started building this little dam around this spring so I could raise some trout and we could make even more sustainable life there. And what normally would have taken me maybe a week and a half to create this concrete structure took me about 4 weeks. And I would go out with 10 bags of concrete each day that I would go out. And it was odd because I'd have maybe 3 bags of concrete left at the end of the day. And I didn't think a thing about it. And so when I heard that my neighbor to the north of me, or us, had gone down to feed his horses and then had all this missing time, and when he came back, the moon was out. The seed was planted. Well, maybe every time I went out by myself to work on the property, I was being taken. And and so, from then on, and then the first night we were in the house, we had an experience, and the third night it just accelerated. And so, but you couldn't plan on it because as it turned out, they would come when the moon was down, when you couldn't see them, and at the same time, usually around 1:15 or 1:30 at night. So most people were asleep, which I would generally be asleep at that time. So you couldn't plan on anything because you didn't know exactly when their visiting times were.
Exactly. They would just pop in and be sneaky about it.
How did the children react when this started taking place? Were they fearful of it, or did they have questions about what was taking place, or were you able to make them feel comfortable because you'd already been there?
Well, we didn't speak about it at all. And they were too young. One was 3 and one was 6. And they were too young to really understand anything, except one night I woke up, and shortly after we'd moved in, well, I suppose it was 6 months later, and our son, who was 6, is whispering in my face in a very excited manner, "Daddy, Mommy, Daddy, Mommy." And so I said, what is it? And he said, "Some little people just ran out of my room." Well,
boy,
that'll, and so, I knew what he was talking about. And so I said, "Oh no, it's probably just your imagination. You're having a dream, and everything's okay." And so I took him back to bed, and he wanted me to close his closet door because he thought something came out of it. And so I did. And then I told him I'd go around and check all the doors, and I did. And I came back and reported to him that, that everything was all right. But, I knew the reality is that they were also interested in the children, and maybe, and in retrospect, even more interested in them than they were of myself and my wife. But one of the significant things that happens was our son saw this entity in a tree outside of a deck that he was playing on, and so he was the one who reported it, and so I could try to condense that story if you'd like.
Yeah, that's a great story, and
it is.
Let's let everybody hear about this one.
Yeah, I've never heard anything like this before, but I thought I was going crazy, and so I went up to see Leo Sprinkle. This is 1983, and I'd seen him on a news program, and so he talked about what he was doing with people who had been abducted, and all the anchor people were snickering and carrying on, and so trying to make fun of him. And so I knew I just had to see him. So I got an appointment with him, and he was up at the University of Wyoming in Laramie, which is about 5 hours away. So I got an appointment and drove up to see him, and I did. And he's at that point was, asked me these questions, and all of a sudden I realized that, I've been having strange things happen to me all my life, or a part of my life at that time. So in the final moments of visiting with him, I asked him what he thought I should do, and he said, "Well, go home and meditate. Go up on the mesa and meditate." And I said in my mind, not going to happen. There's rattlesnakes up there, and there's bears and cougars, and that's not going to happen. So, but I didn't say anything. I listened intently, and he said, "Tell them that you put all your guns away, and that you want to meet with them, and you'd like to meet with them, but you don't want to be frightened by them by maybe walking around the corner in the middle of the night and coming face to face with one. You want them to, to present themselves in such a way," he didn't say this, but in such a way that, it didn't make you fearful. Right. Because who knows, I'd either go ballistic or faint or whatever. So, sure. I leave his office in Laramie, and it's a 5-hour drive home. And all the way I'm driving, I'm saying this, which became, I called it a mantra, because I had never meditated consciously before, and I don't even think I did then. I think when I do my artwork, I'm meditating, and I think a lot of people, when they're doing something they love, and it takes me into a different time, different zone, so to speak, I'm meditating. So, but I keep repeating this in my mind, and then I shift it to the back and top of my head. And so I'm repeating it up there mentally, and at the same time thinking about, keeping out of the way of trucks and buses and the like on my way home. When I get home, I've said it probably 1,000 times or more. And but I'm all ramped up. So I stay up and I work on a design piece until about 3 o'clock in the morning. And I'm saying it in my mind, that I want to meet with them. I put my guns away. I won't hurt them, but I don't want to be frightened myself. So I worked till about 3 o'clock the next morning, and go to bed, get up at 10 and start working again. And I'm still repeating my mantra. And about 1 o'clock, I hear our son come running in the house. And our house is a very open house, and I'm on the second floor. He comes in the first floor of the garden level, and he's yelling, "Mommy, Mommy, there's a live skeleton out in the tree." And so, my wife, Sarah, said, Scott, it's probably just an owl. So, no, it's not an owl. So they go through this whole logical thing of trying to figure out what this thing is. And he is insistent that it is a live skeleton. So I'm upstairs still saying my mantra. And so then I hear him come upstairs. And I'm not too far from a circular staircase or the spiral staircase that is close to his bedroom. So he goes in his bedroom and he's shuffling around in there, and he comes out and he sticks this Encyclopedia Britannica book in my face, and because I'm in a stationary position on the floor working, and it's the anatomy of humans, human anatomy, a section of the encyclopedia. He sticks this thing in my face, the book, and the page is cracked open, and there it is. There's a human skeleton standing, big head, and without all this flesh and the like that we gather over the years, it looks like an ET. Well, I'm sort of electrified because, he has seen something that came in the daytime. That's
and
pretty.
He's persistent about it. He wasn't going to walk away from this. He knew what he saw. He was just trying to get you guys on board.
Exactly. And and it wasn't as though he came in with this invented story of a monster that you might have seen on Saturday morning. We had no TV, nor did we have radio reception at the house, so they weren't watching that stuff. So I immediately think, oh my God. So I would run downstairs. Well, Sarah, my wife, and Brianna, my daughter, they were already headed out the door because they'd heard what had gone on upstairs. So we ran out to this tree, and it was a pine tree, a ponderosa pine tree, and it was about 35 feet tall. And so he said it was sitting right here on this limb, and the limb was pretty good size. So he describes, and I describe it in the book, how he was sitting and what he was doing. Well, he said Daddy, Mommy. That's what he used to, when he was excited, he would use those words. He said, and it was just sitting there. And so we said, well, how did you see it? And he said, I was playing out on the porch, which I'd heard him there for hours as I worked. And then I didn't hear him for a while. Well, he had seen this white thing in a tree. And so he jumped over the side of the deck and went out to see it. And he said, Mommy and Daddy, it was really scary. He said it was looking down at the ground. And he said it was a skeleton. He didn't say butt. His butt was sitting on the limb. His legs were dangling over. His arms were on the sides of his body, holding onto the limb. And he was looking down. And he said, and when I got there, Daddy, he said, it looked up at me and it had Molly eyes. Well, we didn't know for a while, but Molly, we didn't put two and two together at that moment, but Molly was our cat. And so the entity had the eyes of a cat. And he said, it was really scary, Daddy. And so,
wow, poor kid.
Yeah. So we asked him about it. And so he was talking. I said, let's go in and do some drawings. So we went in and did some drawings. And so those are also in the book. And so we did sketches, and then he did a long drawing. And the drawing, it's it's pretty intense, but he's only 9. So, he has all the characteristics of a long drawing, of a child drawing. But he said I hope I get this right, but the pupil, which was that of a cat, was purple. The sclera, which is the white of our eye, was yellow. And the iris, or let's see, I got this. Yellow and then blue. The blue was the pupil. The iris was purple, and the sclera was white. Not white, but yellow.
Definitely not human eyes.
Yeah, right. And so, so we were all excited, but we were really crestfallen that it wasn't in the tree. And so my courage is a lot greater in the daytime than it is at night.
Smart man.
I have been.
But here you had been repeating your mantra for all of that trip that you took in the car, and then you come home and this happens. I mean, it's obviously no coincidence, right?
Well, see, I didn't pick up on that until we started writing the book. So we finally go back to doing our usual stuff that Sunday afternoon. So I'm up working and continue on. And so he and his mother and our daughter, leave and pick up a neighborhood boy to come over and stay all night. So all of a sudden it's nighttime, and I'm still working and repeating my mantra because I don't get it because I didn't really believe it. I didn't even think about it.
You weren't putting two together. Yeah.
Well, when I left Leo's, I didn't really have a lot of faith in with meditating. I always thought it was a bunch of girly crap that that was just
God's going to get you for that one.
Well, I don't mean that in a negative way, but I meditate when I do my artwork. I'm positive of that. I'm in in a timeless zone. Well, at any rate, so I keep doing it, and they come. His friend come, and they are playing in the bedroom, which is not too far from where I'm working. And it's nighttime, and all of a sudden they come washing in to where I was. Their eyes are big as saucers. And Scott says, Daddy, he's looking in the window now at us. And so, Jesus, I've just, freaked out. So mostly because the way their faces were, their expressions of this total amazement, a little fear and excitement all wrapped into one. And so I get up and I run in the bedroom with them, and we look where they point up to this garden window, and and there's nothing there. And so they're, bummed out again. And so the garden window it's like our sliding glass doors have been bayed out like 36 inches.
We're running out of time. So if you can wrap this up, Sean. That would be good.
Okay. So at any rate, they said, "Aren't you going to go out? Aren't you going to go outside and meet him and see him?" And so I didn't say anything. I just said no. And so I felt like such a jerk, but I just couldn't muster the guts to go outside because I turned off, the lights were off, and I could have turned those on and but I didn't think. I think I was so into what I was doing and almost hypnotized myself for this mantra business that I couldn't make a good decision. And so
yet it worked. The mantra worked. My God.
I'm 99% sure now, but and I missed the most grand opportunity of a lifetime.
Oh, gee.
Sure. And
I've got a couple questions I just want to get to before we end the show because these people have been pretty insistent about getting an answer. This one is from Neutron, wants to know, did the entities ever put loud noise in your ears, causing you to black out?
No.
Okay.
Never.
And here's another question. This is from Supersonic, who wants to know, have you or any family member ever been approached by federal agencies about your abductions?
No, not that I know of. We had a black car follow us home tried to follow us home from Laramie, Wyoming after a UFO conference in 1983, but he wasn't speedy enough to keep up with us.
Yeah, put the pedal to the metal. Well, look, Sean, we're going to have you back because there's so much more to talk about. But anyways, we're going to have to wrap the show tonight. And thank you so much for sharing your story with us, with our entire audience. We're very grateful. And again, everybody, the name of the book is Flashbacks, an artist's memoir of alien abductions, native spirits, and enlightenment. Get the book. Look at the photos. They're pretty incredible proof of what happened to Sean and his family. We can't wait for your next book, so keep us posted on that. And we're going to wrap this up tonight. Next week, everybody, free readings with Jane Siebold. She's going to be with us. Be sure to join us for that. And until then, we're going to see you on the Blue Highway. Good night, everyone.
Good night.